Welcome to the world of TrendPod AI. Welcome back. Today we're digging into a set of sources you sent over. They're all focused on, well, a really prominent Indian businessman and the whole complex story around Kingfisher Airlines' failure.
That's right. And what's interesting here is we have this detailed interview transcript included. It gives a very, very specific viewpoint on events that, were reported everywhere.
Exactly. So our mission today is pretty straightforward. Let's unpack the key claims, the main points from these sources, just to get a clearer picture of this particular perspective. Ready to jump in?
Absolutely. Let's start with the financials, maybe. That seems to be a core point in the source material.
Okay, yeah, unpack that. The source really hammers on the debt figures. It mentions the Debt Recovery Tribunal, the DRT, certified the debt at 6,203 crores, plus interest, of course.
Right, 6,203 crores plus interest. But then, and this is key to the source's argument, it points to a government report, Ministry of Finance, and even a PM statement, citing a recovery figure of 14,100 crores, recovered specifically from his assets.
Wow, okay. So the source is highlighting that massive difference. The recovered amount, they're saying, is way more than the certified debt.
Precisely. And the question raised in the source is, well, if that much money is back, why haven't the banks provided a clear statement of account? That's the contention presented.
Interesting point from that perspective. Okay, what about the airline itself? How it went down?
Yeah, moving to the airline's downfall. The source claims that back after the 2008 financial crisis, which hit airlines hard,
Yeah, globally.
The businessman apparently went to the finance minister at the time, Sri Pranab Mukherjee. He wanted to discuss downsizing Kingfisher to cut costs.
Okay, and the crucial claim here from this source is what?
The claim is he was specifically told not to downsize, and that he was assured the banks would, support the airline.
And the source frames that moment as kind of the turning point, like how it all started going wrong.
That's exactly how it's put. It also touches on missed opportunities, potentially, like a potential foreign investment deal with Etihad Airways, apparently. It could have recapitalized the airline, but the source claims the government didn't permit it. And then, adding to that point, the source notes that just a few months after Kingfisher collapsed, a very similar deal was greenlit for another Indian airline. It suggests, well, maybe a selective approach.
Okay. The sources also get into the allegations against him personally, right? Siphoning funds, lifestyle stuff.
Oh yeah, extensively. The source strongly refutes any claims of siphoning money or misusing loan funds for, say, his Formula One team or personal lifestyle.
And what's the counter-argument presented?
Well, a few key things. One, he apparently provided a personal guarantee for the loans, so his own assets were on the line. Two, he claims he actually infused about 3,000 crores of the UB Group's own money into Kingfisher.
Okay, so putting his own money in, essentially. What about the employees who weren't paid? That was a huge, painful issue.
It was, and the source addresses it directly. The claim is that money was actually available for salaries around 260 crores from UB.
So why weren't they paid, according to this account?
Because, the source alleges, those funds were frozen by the Karnataka High Court, apparently at the bank's request. This freeze prevented salary payments.
Right.
And he claims he even applied to the court to release those funds specifically for salaries, but the banks objected, and the court refused. He also states he took no salary himself during that time.
Okay, and the whole king of good times image, the flamboyance, how does the source explain that?
Basically, it dismisses it as largely a media creation, driven by marketing for Kingfisher beer, the brand promotion, to sell papers or get clicks, not something he deliberately cultivated using airline funds.
So the argument is that image wasn't funded by the loans.
Correct. The source states any spending on that lifestyle was from his own money, separate from the airline.
Got it. Let's talk about him leaving India, March 2016. The source has a specific take on that, too.
Yes, it claims it wasn't a case of fleeing the country. It argues it was a pre-scheduled trip for a meeting in Geneva.
Pre-scheduled. And did he tell anyone he was going?
According to the source, yes. He claims he informed the finance minister he was traveling.
Okay. But he didn't come back.
Well, the source claims that's because his Indian passport was then revoked while he was abroad, making a return impossible.
Okay, so the argument is calling him a fugitive for not returning after the passport was canceled is misleading.
That's the perspective presented, yes.
Yeah.
And it adds the context that he's been a permanent resident in the UK since way back in 1988.
Right. So last area, the legal system, the media narrative, how does the source frame that?
The view put forward is that the intense focus on him feels like a targeted attack, maybe because he was such a public figure, a poster boy, or even a political football.
Implying others with big defaults weren't pursued in the same way.
That's the suggestion, yeah. And regarding the specific allegations from agencies like the CBI and ED, things like misrepresenting financials for loans, he claims in the source that these are refutable, that proof is lacking, even though cases are proceeding. It highlights that international courts have only found prima facie cases.
Meaning enough evidence just to go to trial, not actual guilt.
Exactly. Not a finding of guilt yet. The source's bottom line seems to be that in India, business failure often gets unfairly equated with fraud, especially with bank money involved.
But he argues his case is different, particularly citing that recovery figure we discussed earlier.
Precisely. That the amount recovered, according to the government's own figures cited in the source, changes the narrative significantly.
So for you listening, you can really see the layers here. This deep dive into these specific sources shows just how complex these stories are.
It really does. And it highlights how public narratives get formed and, frankly, how challenging it is to understand what truly happened when you have conflicting accounts, even from the person right at the center.
Definitely gives you a lot to think about.
So here's maybe a final thought to leave you with. Given that this source material presents a situation where the recovered amount from his assets is claimed to be significantly more than the initial debt certified by the DRT, what does this specific scenario, as described here, suggest about how we understand default versus recovery in these huge financial cases? Or maybe even how success and failure get judged in the public eye?
That wraps up our deep dive into this complex story, focusing specifically on the perspective presented in the sources you provided.
And it really shows the value of looking closely at source material and considering all the different perspectives, doesn't it?
Thank you.